Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my Stage YouTube channel. If you are seeing my face for the first time, my name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre. And this is the place where I come and talk about theatre. Sometimes I review shows that I get invited to see, other times I give you a sneak peek of that theatre-going experience, sometimes I just talk about all of the latest news and gossip about theatre on Broadway and in the West End. If you enjoyed today's video, or if you've been enjoying any of my videos, make sure you subscribe to my Stage YouTube channel to stay up to date with all of my very regular theatre content. So today, I want to tell you about a theatre trip I went on recently that was very exciting. So I got to go and see The Witches of Eastwick in concert at the Sondheim Theatre earlier this week. Now this was a one-night-only concert presentation of a musical that hasn't been produced in this country since its original run and subsequent UK tour. It was being produced by rising star producer Jack Maple, it was being directed by Maria Friedman, who you may know as the narrator from the Joseph film with Donny Osmond, and who also starred as Suki Rougemont in the original West End production of The Witches of Eastwick. Who better to direct this new staging? Now going into this was not a show I knew really at all. I knew exactly two numbers from the show. One of them because someone had performed it in a concert I had been doing once, and the other one because I had heard a drag queen lip sync to it at a gay bar. So this gives you some sense of the nature of this show. It is high camp. And I'd been hearing a lot of adoration and fondness and perhaps guilty pleasure indulgence for The Witches of Eastwick for quite a while. I knew it was based on a film that had Cher and Michelle Pfeiffer and Susan Sarandon in, for crying out loud. So, you know, it's camp. So I was already quite excited and had some reasonably high expectations based on what I'd heard about the show and the love that I'd already seen for it. If that wasn't enough, the cast for this, when it was announced, was really exciting. Now there were a couple of changes to the cast. Originally, it was meant to be Carrie Fletcher and Laura Pitt Pulford and Danielle Steers playing the three Witches of Eastwick, with Giles Terera in the other leading role. Now Giles and Danielle both unfortunately had to drop out of the production quite near to the actual date of the concert and were replaced by John Partridge and Natasha, both also incredible performers. Throw in Claire Moore, Chrissy Beamer, Nathan Amsey, Alfie Friedman, like the cast was just stacked. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek of the show's rapturous curtain call, and then I'm going to try and tell you why this was such a sensational evening at the theatre. Take a look. So before I even start reviewing this, I want to tell you a little bit about how this had been put together. Because for what was meant to be a concert production, sometimes we talk about things being semi-staged, where you still have music stands potentially, or scripts in hand. Think the Les Mis 25th anniversary or 10th anniversary concerts, and it's not fully choreographed. There's no full blocking, there's no set pieces necessarily, it's not a full version of a show. This was barely semi-staged, this was almost entirely staged. Like, obviously we didn't have massive set pieces, they utilised cleverly some of the bits of the Les Mis set. They had a couple of the little bits of scenery, they had some tables and chairs and benches and gravestones and things. It was just fully costumed. The three leading ladies had scripts in hand at various points throughout the show, but they were not really referring to them. I think it was just because they had so much dialogue and so many lyrics that it would have been needlessly anxiety-inducing to try and expect them to learn it within the space of a week. And at no point did it detract from the performance, because they barely referred to them the entire time. It's worth saying John Partridge, who was only cast in the role about a week before we saw his performance, at no point held a script in his hand. Like, that man was committed. So Maria Friedman had clearly gone into this with a very bold agenda to deliver a fully realised, one-night-only production that had a lot of magical tricks up its sleeve that I will get to later. What she wasn't expecting, and what I didn't realise until she told us in her opening speech when we got to the theatre, is that day one of rehearsals, she had tested positive for COVID, so had spent almost the entire rehearsal process directing via Zoom. Consider that for a second and how ridiculous that is as a concept. If you think it's hard having a meeting via Zoom, imagine being directed in a stage musical by someone who's not in the same room that you are in. but thanks to an excellent creative team around her and a very patient and understanding cast, they managed to put together a really fantastic product. So having not seen the show before or really listened to it at all, I really enjoyed this material. It struck me how different it was to almost any other show I had ever seen. I mean, the whole conceit of the show is quite camp and wonderfully far-fetched, because you have these three divorcees living in this quiet little suburban town filled with judgmental housewives, and they do not realise that they have magical powers, and they inadvertently conjure the devil while trying to drunkenly envision the perfect man. I mean, we've all been there. He then arrives to town, wastes very little time, and soon ends up sleeping with all three of them. They figure this out and are surprisingly game with the whole thing, and ridiculousness ensues. It's this kind of magical battle of the sexes that talks about female empowerment, as well as shaming and sexuality. And if you think, the film was having these conversations decades ago, the stage musical was having these conversations in the very, very early 2000s, this is something we definitely talk about a lot now, but I'm sure the conversation may not have been ready for it back then. So I was just blown away by this material that was fun and hedonistic and raunchy, and you kept getting to these junctions in the plot where you thought it was going to go one way, like when the three women find out the same man, who is also the devil, is sleeping with all of them. You expect in these kind of narratives for them to then like team up and 9 to 5 style be like, no, we're not going to take it. The fact that they were like, fine, let's just have a series of musical four-ways for the rest of this 2-act musical, I found staggering, and I was like, you know what? Yas queens. I was fully behind it. You know, it just wasn't what you would expect to see in this kind of a show, and it was all the more entertaining for it. It was high camp, it really was. And also some genuinely really great music as well. There's a couple songs I have not been able to get out of my head since seeing the concert, and I'm mad that there wasn't a live recording of that concert because the vocals were so good. I have to name 2 moments here. No, I have to name 3. The first one came in the middle of the first act. This is a number called Dirty Laundry. Now, I've done a little bit of research subsequently, and I'm sure somebody will be able to tell us in the comments section, but this was apparently a really big show-stopping number in the original production. This is where all of the ensemble playing gossiping housewives are talking about the fact that our 3 female protagonists are all having an affair with the new man who's just moved into town, Daryl Van Horn, the devil. It becomes this huge dance number, it's this really catchy song, and it is led by a character called Felicia, the busybody to end all town busybodies. Originally played by Rosemary Ash to great acclaim, she was played in this production by Claire Moore, which I find hilarious, because Claire Moore and Rosemary Ash seem inseparable as actresses. The fact that they were both in the original Phantom of the Opera production, one of them as Carlotta, the other as alternate Christine. Rosemary Ash was then Miss Andrew in the original West End Mary Poppins. When Mary Poppins came back to the West End, it was Claire Moore, and they've now shared this role as well. Like, both vocally and in terms of sensibilities, there's a definite similarity between those 2 actresses. So Dirty Laundry was a definite showstopper. There was huge applause after that. The other moment I want to talk about came at the end of the first act. Now, it was always magical when you had the 3 leads singing together. I mean, you have Natasha Barnes, Carrie Fletcher, and Laura Pitt Pulford. The voices, the acting choices, just phenomenal leading ladies. Such a treat to get all 3 of them together. Like a Neapolitan ice cream of musical theatre excellence. Now, what happened at the end of the first act is they actually flew them above the stage of the Sondheim Theatre, which for a semi-staged concert presentation is just completely wild. And you saw the harnesses come down and you saw them get attached to them, which in a full production they would find some way to hide that in the darkness and they would just fly them up. I've seen some footage of how it was originally done. This was much more brightly lit. You saw what was happening at all times, but it was still quite staggering that it was even going to happen. Like, you have a band on the back half of the stage, you have singers from a drama school, you have the ensemble all around, you're thinking, this is just a concert, they're still not actually going to fly them, are they? But they did. And even though I knew exactly what it was going to look like, I was still awestruck by them flying them. There's something so magical about seeing that and just so effervescently joyous. However, the song that they fly to at the end of Act 1 is not my favourite. I don't find it particularly compelling. It feels like a kind of a generic lyric to me, and it was not as impactful. I could not sing you any of that melody line a week later. The song that stays with me came in the second act. Now, I feel like sometimes when you're at a show, if there's a really great first act, it just sets you up so well for excitement in the interval, and then in the second act, all they have to do is keep delivering good number after good number, and you'll just keep riding that wave. If they've got you up to that maximum level of enthusiasm, you will just stay there. And that's how I felt when, quite early in the second act, the three of them did a number called Another Night at Daryl's. From what I can tell, this was originally a solo for Lucy Arnaz as Alex. It had been readapted as a trio for all three of the leading ladies, and then they did a little reprise of it when they came back on in sassy trench coats that we had seen them put on, but then they revealed lingerie under the sassy trench coats. Loved that for them, they all looked fantastic. But just the way their voices worked together on this like jazzy, belty line was so good. One other really lovely moment of the show I do want to talk about was right at the end, where the composer of Witches of Eastwick the musical was brought out on stage, and he then announced that they would be tying up some loose ends, by which he meant Maria Friedman was going to come on stage and sing Loose Ends, a song that used to be part of the show, with Carrie Hope Fletcher. That was a really special moment, because you had the two Sukis singing together while the composer accompanied them on the piano. It was just a really glorious and meaningful way to pay homage to the original production.
I close my eyes, I fade to black, I hide my face, I turn my back, and there are these loose ends to deal with, loose ends. I clear my throat, I give a sigh, unconcerned when all the while they're haunting me, loose ends to tie up, loose ends.
Something else that was very fun, Carrie Hope Fletcher shared a scene in the second act of the concert with Chrissy Beamer, who was set to replace her as the new Cinderella in Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella had the show continued to run. And they got to hug and they got to sing a little bit together, and the fact they got to share that moment, it highlighted how different the two actresses are vocally, stylistically, tonally, and how interesting that piece of casting was for Cinderella, but also it allowed that moment to mean a little bit more than it already would have meant, that kind of embrace and that kind of acceptance. It felt like a moment of nurturing and reassurance and connection and understanding between the two actresses who had gone through something together, albeit separately. Standout performances is going to be a really hard one to pick out here, and I'm going to have to mention a lot of people, because all three leading ladies were absolutely fantastic in these roles. Laura Pitt Pulford, I expect nothing less than brilliance from her, because she has delivered every single time I have seen her in a show, and especially in these recent concert productions. She was fantastically good in Gypsy as Louise. She was incredible here. It's very exciting and interesting getting to see her mature into older characters. She's been playing ingenues and younger girls in musical theatre for so long. It's nice to see her playing a more mature woman now, and I feel like there's so many exciting roles that's going to open her up to. Natasha Barnes getting this opportunity, she was just so down to earth, so funny, and so chill. When you think she was the last to be cast in this production because she was a late replacement for Danielle Steers, because it's the Cher role, I only connected the dots on that afterwards. But the fact that Natasha was just so chill and so relaxed the entire time, probably wasn't inside, but was seeming as though she was remarkable to me. And Carrie Hope Fletcher. I've seen Carrie quite a lot recently with all of the Cinderella stuff going on, and between this and Cinderella and Les Mis and Heathers, this was the best I've ever seen Carrie Hope Fletcher in anything. I thought she was incredible here. And another one who is now finally getting to play more adult characters. She's played adults before. She played Truly Scrumptious in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. She played Fantine, technically an adult character, I suppose. But there was something about the maturity of Suki Rougemont in this that felt like she could bring new shades of herself to it, and the acting performance was incredible. The vocal, the strongest I have ever heard her deliver, and she had this particular number, Words, 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 where it was like belty, crazy, stratospheric vocals, but also fast-paced patter comedy moments and character. She was hilarious and committed and just fantastic. This was a really great piece of casting. And you can't not mention John Partridge as Daryl Van Horn. Like I said, he was just so committed to everything he was doing, vocally so well suited to this role. His acting choices, his dynamics with all of his scene partners on stage, the way that he moved, his physicality. He was so committed to the characterization of Daryl Van Horn, it felt more like it was a reunion concert and he'd played the role 10 years ago rather than playing it for the first time now. But the complete scene stealer we have to talk about was Claire Moore as Felicia. She was hysterical, and this is a very demanding role, where vocally it's quite demanding, the range that it has in terms of the emotional extremes of it all. She was hysterical for a good 80% of the time that she was on stage, but still managed to make her character funny, and you kept wanting for her to come back on stage even though she was playing this awful woman. She was doing like these sleight of hand magic tricks because she kept having to look like she was coughing up random items that they were putting into voodoo dolls. So contending with all of that, Claire Moore just about stole this damn show. She was hilarious. Her performance of Evil in the second act was so good, I feel like she would have had a 3-level standing ovation from the Sondheim Theatre if anyone could move to stand up. Like, we were so blown away by that number, it just hit us, and we were immobilized by musical theatre excellence. Claire Moore needs more roles she can knock out of the park like this, because give her the material and she's out here giving you Olivier Award worthy performances. If I maybe have one tiny little criticism, because I'm me and I was just made this way. There was a song called Dance with the Devil where Alfie Friedman's character is quite repressed and he's trying to work out how to regain the interest of his girlfriend, and Daryl Van Horn, John Partridge, teaches him how to dance sexy with the ensemble, and this will somehow resolve his problems. And at the beginning he kind of doesn't know how to dance, but then he gets possessed by the devil and starts gyrating his hips, and that was really funny the way that he did that. Like, his face had no idea how his hips were doing what they were doing. But then by the end of it, I was not understanding as an audience member whether he was still meant to be bad at the dancing or whether he was meant to suddenly be good at the dancing, because he was not at the same choreographic level as the male ensemble doing the choreography behind him. And when Nathan Amsey, who was another character who was being similarly convinced and possessed as Clyde, when he started dancing, he was selling it, and he was giving me, I can suddenly dance because I've been infused with devil sex magic, and I did not get the same level of devil sex magic from Alfie Friedman's dance performance. So what comes next for this show? I do not know. I was wondering if, like Bonnie and Clyde back in January, we were going to have an announcement at the end that there was going to be a future life, but it's really hard to say. I wonder whether this concert was designed more specifically to gauge the interest for this show. Obviously, it was just the one performance. What was there was of such high quality, it has made me desperate for a revival of this show. Whether there's an appetite for a full West End staging, I don't know, but certainly somewhere like the Charing Cross, a smaller venue to try and build some momentum with a stellar cast, would be something I would definitely welcome, because the material is absolutely strong enough to stand up, and I think maybe more relevant to audiences today than it would have been 20 years ago. So if you would like to see a Witches of Eastwick revival in the West End, let me know down in the comment section. And if you saw the original production, or if you've ever seen this produced before, perhaps an Amdram version or in a different country, let me know about that as well, because I'm becoming fully obsessed with Witches of Eastwick and I'm doing an entire deep dive on it. So tell me literally any interesting information you have about the show in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my Stage YouTube channel for plenty more content coming very soon about all your favourite shows. If there's a specific show you want me to talk about on my channel, make sure you let me know that as well. And if you want to support me as a Stagey content creator, you can head over to patreon.com/MickeyJoeTheatre, where you can gain access to some exclusive photo and video content. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day.
For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!